You're listening to the ESP, the European Skeptics Podcast, an independent weekly show set out to bring you news, interesting topics, and interviews with people mostly from Europe, building bridges and breaking down language barriers to show the world how active and awesome the skeptical movement is in the region. This is episode 519. I'm your host, András Pinter, and joining me for the show is my co-host, Pontus Böckman. Servus.
Servus, András. I could hardly recognize you because you are at home. But,
yes, I'm wearing a special T-shirt.
Yes, it says Jag är skeptisk. Jag är skeptisk, which means I'm skeptical, and that's the slogan of the Swedish skeptics. So I don't know who I am then. I probably have some Magyar T-shirt on. Magyar. Can't even pronounce it.
So you haven't got one yet?
No, I wish I knew somebody who could give one to me.
Oh, that is completely my fault. I know someone who knows someone who knows someone who might be able to give you one the next time you meet them.
Very good, very good. All right, so how are things?
Pretty good. It's always good to be home.
Mm-hmm. Must be unusual.
It is unusual, but it's unbelievably busy every time I get home because, you know, within the short amount of time, I have to do everything that I'm obviously incapable of doing when I'm 13,000 kilometers away. So that's difficult. So I'm playing catch up all the time when I'm home. Yeah. How are you?
I'm fine. We still have very cold weather here. I was visiting with my mother, and she has 2 dogs, and I went for a walk very early on Saturday morning, it must have been, and it was 17 below zero.
What? Okay. But that must be extreme for Malmö, right?
I can't remember when it happened last. It wasn't actually, it's not exactly in Malmö, it's a 20 kilometers inland, and there they have it slightly colder often, but not 17 below zero.
So
that
is still extreme.
So I had plenty of clothes on. I was still cold. I was worried about the dogs because they were walking barefoot in the snow.
So it looks like Donald Trump is right that global warming is a hoax.
Yeah, we'll talk more about global warming later on. Don't you worry.
Yeah, he would really like to see some other stuff being labeled as hoax, like the Epstein stuff, but it doesn't look like it's gonna go away anytime soon. Even no matter what he tries to throw at the whole world.
Can you believe we have still 3 years of him left?
No,
at least you never know.
Unbelievable. Well, we don't know. We don't know how much he's got left because there are rumors, obviously, that his health is not the best. Well, he's definitely been going through a lot of examinations that he has no idea why that was, or at least that's what he says. So at least his mental capabilities are often questioned.
They were always questioned, to be honest.
Yeah. But in connection with the Epstein-files, we have some new developments because it looks like the Prince of Wales is finding that even his signature environmental initiative isn't immune to the shadows of the past. So
we're talking about William now, right?
William, the Prince of Wales.
Yeah. So I'm still thinking of Charles as the Prince of Wales, but that was that's old news. Yes.
Yeah, yesterday I gave a city tour to a bunch of Aussies, like 17-year-old girls and their teachers, and they were enjoying the sightseeing of Säckasvägarvad. They even enjoyed more when it started snowing. They went hysterical, like absolutely lost their minds that they saw snow. Anyhow, if someone needs a refresher about the Earthshot Prize, that is William's, it's often referred to as like the Nobel Prize for Nature. It was launched in 2020, and it's a 10-year mission to find 50 solutions to the world's most pressing environmental challenges by 2030. And every year, 5 winners walk away with £1 million each to scale up their green tech. So that's pretty good stuff. But this week, the Earthshot is facing a different kind of heat. I don't know if you've heard. Because the anti-monarchy group, Republic, has formally reported the charity to the UK's Charity Commission. We have mentioned that commission prior to this as well.
Yes, we have.
And the reason for them reporting the charity is that freshly unredacted documents from the US Department of Justice it's the infamous Epstein-files, revealed a couple of new connections. So the records link Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, the CEO of DP World, which is a founding partner and a major donor to Earthshot. So links were found to the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
Mm-hmm.
The files allegedly contain emails between the two from 2009, including disturbing references to a torture video that Jeffrey Epstein said had enjoyed immensely. So it's like, what the fuck was going on? But there is no suggestion of illegal activity by the prince or Prince William or the prize itself. The optics are, to put it mildly, a bit radioactive.
Mm-hmm.
So skeptics and campaigners are asking how a prestige project built on urgent optimism can end up in a financial alliance with a figure now surfacing in the Epstein scandal. So, well, the next awards will be given out in 2026 in Mumbai. So the prince is facing a growing chorus of questions. How deep did the due diligence go? Because you're expecting from a charity of that high esteem to do their research of who they accept as a donor. So, well, can it be still a global beacon for the futures, or it won't survive the murky associations of its founders? So,
isn't it strange that the Epstein files mostly have consequences for people in Europe, not in the US?
Exactly.
For some reason, nobody is going to resign in the US over the Epstein files.
Resigning left and right all over Europe. That's unbelievable. And it's unbelievable how deep the connections of this motherfucker, well, more like a kiddie fucker, unfortunately, but how deep his connections go. This is really concerning. But to go back to the Earthshot Prize for just a moment, it's interesting because it doesn't face possible legal activity. What we are seeing here is more along the lines of mismanagement of reputational risk. The Charity Commission has rules applying to this current controversy. There is a requirement to know your donors. The Charity Commission for England and Wales mandates that trustees follow the Know Your Donor principles, so they have a legal duty to verify the identity and suitability of major donors and partners, and whether the association with the donor could damage the charity's reputation or the public trust and confidence. So this is a very legitimate question, and the reputational risk comes at a price. So obviously donors are taken on board for financial benefits. But if the reputational risk is too high, then is it really worth it? The Charity Commission has confirmed as of 11th of February that it is assessing the information to determine if there is a formal role for the regulator. And this is a standard preliminary step when it comes to these situations. So the Epstein factor seems to be at play again, and it's really concerning to see.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that many of our listeners don't agree with me. I'm quite fond of this charity, and I think what they do is very important. And I don't have anything against Prince William either. So I know it's not a popular sentiment among UK skeptics because they tend to be on the Republican side of the political spectrum, I think. But yeah, it's sad to see this.
Yeah, well, I have no love for the idea of monarchy, and I've said so many times.
I know, yeah. Me neither.
I don't know William. He doesn't reply when I try to call him, so I don't know much about him. I've never talked to the man.
What a bastard.
So I don't know anything about the guy personally, but monarchy as such, I'm not very fond of. But still, I mean, if they can pull off a few charities that do something good, that's good, of course. Yeah. But maybe we could do that without the monarchy, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's true. Who knows? This might be yet another crack on that monarchy of the United Kingdom.
Could be.
Anywho, let's turn our skeptical ears towards This Week in Skeptical History, or TWISH. All right, and this week we are heading back to Italy in the distant past because the day that we celebrate is the 17th, not celebrate, well, commemorate. You will see why. It's the 17th of February, 1600. Mm-hmm. You know what happened then?
Well, I can read the script, but no, I did not. I'll pretend to say, no, I don't know. I have no idea.
So it's a chilly morning in Rome, more than 400 years ago. And a crowd is gathering at the Campo dei Fiori. In the center of the square stands a man named Giordano Bruno. And he's been stripped naked, gagged with a leather bridle to stop him from shouting at the crowd, because he would be shouting all kinds of heresy. And he's tied to a stake. Moments later, the Inquisition lights the fire.
Oops, not a good day for him.
No, it wasn't. If you've seen Cosmos, for example, or read popular science books, you know the standard version. Bruno was the first martyr for science. But we have to look past the martyrdom to the messy reality of the trial, which obviously predated this terrible event of burning him on the stake. Was he a scientist? Or was he a victim of a very specific, very lethal theological power struggle? Let's find out. So, to understand why Bruno burned, you have to understand the man who presided over his final years in prison. Cardinal Roberto Bellarmine. Bellarmine was the kind of a heavyweight champion of the Counter-Reformation. So he wasn't like your average mustache-twirling villain that you see in all kinds of books and movies. No, he was a brilliant, cold-blooded intellectual who would later lead the proceedings against Galileo as well. So he was very prolific when it came to trying to
He was
get
just
people
warming
burned.
up.
Yeah. At the
Well, they
stake
didn't burn
of-
Galileo, did they?
No, he didn't. Actually,
No. Okay.
at first, the verdict against Galileo was death. It was a death sentence. But then it was turned into exile, and then it turned into house arrest. And this was most likely because, no, not most likely, it's definitely because he had very powerful friends. So that's a different story, Galileo's. But so Bellarmine was very enthusiastic when it came to getting people on the stake. And his job was to maintain the ideological monopoly of the church. And mind you, this is the time of the Counter-Reformation. So they had to be very strict and they had to be very, very tough on everyone who said otherwise. So he spent basically on Bellarmine 7 years trying to get Bruno to recant his theories. Why? Because the Inquisition didn't actually want to burn people. They wanted to save them, so to speak, which meant forcing them to admit they were wrong so that others will follow suit. Okay? But Bruno was the ultimate difficult personality. I mean, not to say that Galileo wasn't, but
he was, yes.
Yeah, he was. But Bruno was really difficult when it came to his way of communication. He was a former Dominican friar who had been excommunicated by the Catholics, the Calvinists, and the Lutherans as well. So he was really homeless when it came to his belonging to any kind of church. He was a man who didn't just disagree with you. He told you why your entire worldview was a magical delusion and you're a stupid idiot.
I know the type.
So let's see where the skeptical twist in Giordano Bruno's story is. While we want to claim that Bruno was a hero of the scientific method, the evidence actually shows that he was actually something that we could call the Hermetic mystic. He didn't use a telescope. He used memory palaces, as he referred to them, and ancient Egyptian magic. So basically, one of the things that he was accused of is polytheism. So it was one of these things. Like, for a former Dominican friar, that's a weird way to go down. Going back to Bellarmine and the Inquisition, they didn't care about the earth moving or not. They cared about Bruno's 8 specific heresies that included claiming that Jesus was a clever magician who faked his miracles.
Oh, as like a stage magician, not
Yes. Yes.
just a sleight of hand, and turning water into wine was just a quick trick,
A magic
flick
trick.
of the wrist. Oh,
A magic trick. I think
I can believe that, actually.
Yeah, from our current skeptical point of view, this is very smart. I think he nails it. I mean, really, he hits the nail on the head. And that was one of the things that got him into trouble. He also stated that the Holy Spirit was actually the soul of the world, which you would not think to be such a big mistake. But when you think of how much killing even took place over deciding what the Holy Spirit is and whether the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit belong in one entity or separate entities, in that context, you can understand how big a mistake it is to just call it the soul of the world.
Yeah, well, to be fair, it's one of the most strange concepts of Christianity, this Trinity. I don't really buy it,
and actually, that's right there the most important reason why, in the eyes of Islam, Christianity is a polytheistic religion.
Yeah, well.
Because according to Islam, you can only adore, you can only worship God, and there is only one God. And according to Christianity as well. But for some reason, when it comes to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, it's a complete mix-up. So it's like weird. And then there's a saint that are venerated as holy as God himself occasionally. So it's really weird. So yeah, you have to understand these if you want to understand religions. And yes, of course, there is one thing that has to do with cosmology, and that is his idea of the infinite universe. The idea of Bruno. But he believed it was infinite because an infinite God must create infinite worlds, some of which might have their own versions of Adam and Eve. Ooh. So it's an early idea of the multiverse as well. Oof. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I like this.
And pretty forward thinking. But the
Pope did
Inquisition.
Not agree.
The Inquisition wouldn't have it, so he got into trouble. But from a skeptical perspective, Bruno was being tried for thought crimes. So Bellarmine offered him a deal. Recant these 8 points. I didn't go into all the 8 points, but the most important things were these 3. Recant these 8 points and you live. But I mentioned earlier how much of a dick he might have been. So Bruno's response? He refused to yield even an inch. So he wasn't defending a peer-reviewed paper. He was defending his right to an autonomous mind. It doesn't mean that he was not a martyr for something very important and crucial for current-day science and skepticism. But he was not necessarily burned for his scientific views. Okay? And on the 8th of February, 1600, the sentence was read. Bruno famously looked Bellarmine and the other judges in the eye and said, "Perhaps you pronounce this sentence against me with greater fear than I receive it." He knew that by killing him, they were admitting that his ideas were a threat they couldn't answer with logic. And that's also pretty spot on. So, Bruno wasn't a scientist in the modern sense. He was a wild, mystical, and incredibly stubborn philosopher, but he's a skeptical hero for one vital reason. He proved that the state and the church have no business owning the inside of a human head. Today, his statue in Rome, which is on the very spot where he was burned on the stake, it faces the Vatican. It looks towards the Vatican, which is really cool. A silent witness to the fact that while you can burn the thinker, the questions remain. On things like whether Jesus Christ was a smart magician and nothing else.
Okay. I think more about that later, separating religion from state activity.
Yeah. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, we'll look at the really wrong, really right segment later on.
All right. But first, we have another segment, which is all about the news.
Yes, okay. So we have to talk about measles again. It's been a while. We have a history in this podcast on monitoring the measles trend over time. It fluctuates naturally, but we all know that it could have and should have been eliminated entirely if everyone followed the vaccination schedule and recommendations. And those are, to repeat what people already know probably, is that 95% of everyone or more need to be vaccinated. Because measles is so contagious that this is the proportion of the population that you need to vaccinate before you reach so-called herd immunity, which is when the disease doesn't have a chance to propagate. But largely due to Andrew Wakefield and the misled anti-vaxxer movement, this is not where we are. According to WHO, in 2024, the global vaccination rate of the required 2 shots, because you need 2 shots to make it effective, was only 76%. The European region, which is much larger than the EU, but in WHO terms, the European region, I think it's like 48 countries or something. In that entity, the vaccination rate was 91%, which is fairly good, still not enough. I had to scramble a bit to find statistics, the EU only, and as far as I can see, it seems to be only 88.3%, so even lower than the bigger European region. So I should say also that mid-2024 was the worst period in recent times when it comes to measles outbreaks or epidemics. And this is the numbers I have for EU. In spring 2024, we had over 5,000 cases per month for a few months. That was really terrible. But 2025 was also bad. The worst country was Romania, which has been for ages. Their vaccination rate is only 68%.
No,
and that explains...
That's terribly low.
Yeah, it's very low. And that explains their top ranking. And you don't want to be on top on this list, but the top ranking with 220 cases per million inhabitants. And that was for 2025. On second place, we have Belgium. On the far less, 33 cases per million inhabitants. But that still is 400 cases in total. Other countries that are doing badly are Netherlands, Cyprus, Austria, Ireland, and Italy. And this largely correlates with vaccination rates, except for Cyprus. They have 97% vaccination rate, but they still had 23 cases. But you get these statistical flukes when you talk about such small populations.
Yeah, it has a... How many people live in Cyprus?
Well, I'm sure they're doing well. I don't know. I haven't counted them for a while, but okay. I'm sure they're doing fine. Yeah. Except for the measles epidemic that they seem to have had. But that's how it is. Just to remind people, measles is not a benign childhood disease, as people would like to have you think. Even with modern healthcare, about 1 person in 1,000 that gets the disease end up dying, on average. And that's with modern healthcare. Now, as we know, the UK is not part of the EU anymore, so I had to look them up separately. They have a vaccination rate of only 84%, so they are not doing well. And if we would include them in the EU, because fuck Brexit, right? But in the old EU, they would come in on 5th place in 2025 when it comes to cases per million inhabitants. Last month, the WHO declared the UK as no longer considered to have eliminated measles. That's a specific status with a specific definition that I won't get into, but they said they are no longer there because the number of cases they had in 2024. So UK is not doing well. This is why you shouldn't be surprised to hear that there are now a measles outbreak in the north of London, covering 7 schools and a nursery in Enfield. So far, they have reported 60 cases. And I'm sure this will grow because this is just, I think, this week. And with how contagious measles is, I'm sure it will spread.
It's extremely contagious. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, well, you can walk through a room where one person who was infected were several hours before, and you can catch the disease. And you shouldn't have it because it's preventable and it's dangerous. And we should get rid of it. But Andrew Wakefield and others have, unfortunately, too much of an influence. But anyway, so to round this up, measles is still a problem. It comes and goes. The UK is bad. Romania is even worse. And we are far from where we want to be.
Yeah, and on something connected to this, I'd like to mention something from the world of scientific integrity, because that has a connection to what happened with Andrew Wakefield's article in The Lancet in 1998. So we often talk about science being self-correcting, right? But a new article in the journal Research Integrity and Peer Review reminds us that this correction doesn't happen by magic. It happens because of the grueling, often thankless work of skeptics and scientists who refuse to look the other way. It really showcases how the scientific community struggles to enforce rigorous standards when they are most needed. The article is titled Trials and Tribulations of Responsible People Trying to Uphold Scientific Standards, and it's a bit of a horror story for anyone who cares about evidence-based medicine. At the center of the article is a 2020 clinical trial published in the journal The Oncologist, claiming that homeopathy, used as an add-on therapy in advanced non-small cell lung cancer, significantly prolonged patient survival.
This is the story that Edvard Ernst has, or the study that Edvard Ernst has criticized so much.
Frass, I think, was
Michael Frass.
Michael Frass, okay. So this result obviously drew immediate skepticism, including the outrage of Edvard Ernst and many other skeptics. And it was not least because homeopathy fundamentally contradicts well-established principles of chemistry and pharmacology, and it has no biological plausibility whatsoever. So concerned scientists published critiques as early as October 2020, and in 2021, a thorough analysis by independent researchers alleged scientific misconduct as well, including retroactive protocol registration and post-hoc changes to exclusion criteria. These are red flags that undermine both transparency and the validity of the research. The case escalated when the Austrian Agency for Research Integrity, at the request of the lead author's institution, no other, conducted an investigation and in September 2022 concluded that there was evidence of data falsification and manipulation as well. Obviously, the agency recommended immediate retraction, and even the study's own co-authors started jumping ship, asking for their names to be removed from the article, and that makes you think that the case was closed, right? But you couldn't be more wrong. Rather than swift corrective action, the journal's response was very sluggish. An expression of concern was issued, which is okay, but it doesn't equal to retraction of the article.
No.
And the paper remained in the literature for nearly 5 years from its publication, during which time at least 60 citations occurred, and the study was circulated online as supposed proof of homeopathy's effectiveness. So that damage that did is very similar, in effect, to the same actions that you referred to in the form of an article in The Lancet by Andrew Wakefield. Right? Because it was there, it had citations all over the place as well, and it started circulating online, as a result of which it grew out of proportion. So only on the 24th of November 2025, almost 5 years after publication and nearly 4 years after substantial critique, did the oncologist finally retract the article. Even then, the retraction provided no clear rationale or detailed explanation, falling short of guidelines from the Committee on Publication Ethics. What makes this more than an academic squabble is the real-world risk to patients. Misleading claims about life-extending therapies can influence clinical decisions and erode trust in evidence-based medicine. And we see that happen all the time. The article highlights, this article that I'm referring to as a news item, it highlights that flawed studies on complementary therapies have already influenced clinical guidelines in some contexts, despite weak or implausible evidence. So the damage is substantial. The authors of this new paper, including skeptics who led the charge, describe a bureaucratic nightmare in context with this whole case. They use this episode not just to recount their frustrating odyssey, but to underscore systematic weaknesses in how journals handle suspected misconduct. Swift and transparent editorial action, they argue, is essential to maintain scientific integrity and protect both research quality and patient safety. And they also highlight how, instead of doing the aforementioned right thing, major publishers often prioritize avoiding legal risks or saving face over protecting the scientific record. While editors dragged their feet, this paper sat in the public domain for 5 years, offering false hope to cancer patients.
But it's really, really serious.
So, in the broader context of ongoing concerns about reproducibility and scientific standards, which are obviously taken into question here, this case serves as a powerful example of how entrenched incentives, editorial inertia, And inadequate safeguards can allow questionable research to persist for longer than it should. Sometimes it's serious consequences. So unfortunately, we have to admit that when editorial inertia is this strong, the self-correction of science is basically broken. And we should not let that happen. But I'd like to finish on mentioning how much we owe a massive debt to the responsible people mentioned in the title. These are the individuals who spend years writing emails, filing reports, and being ignored, all to ensure that magic water doesn't end up in clinical guidelines. And I urge everyone, if you're in the position to do so, do as they did. Do the same thing. Read this article because it will make you feel like you actually want to do the same thing and you want some action. So this is why I wanted to mention this, and obviously you can find the link on the show notes.
Yeah, right. We have to always stand up against pseudoscience.
Exactly.
And the problem is, if you get some misinformation out there, it takes forever to get it retracted. I'm not even talking about scientific studies. It's getting it out of people's conscience is almost impossible.
Yes.
So, but we need to do it as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. Okay, back to the weather again. It seems to be my favorite topic now. What's happening with the weather?
The hoax that is climate change is what you mean?
The hoax that is weather. Yeah. Anecdotally, I just had a meeting with some of our British colleagues, and those are the ones who will help us do the European Skeptics Congress in Liverpool later on this year. Yeah.
Can't wait.
Yeah, stay tuned for that. And mark your calendars for the 16th to 18th of October 2026 when we meet in Liverpool for the European Skeptics Congress. More about that later, of course. Anybody who loves QED will love this Congress, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, Michael is part of this organization that will help us to organize this Congress. And he was in this meeting, and according to him, it has rained every day so far this year in Liverpool. And this is up until at least 15th of February. And this is not just anecdotally. The Guardian reports that across the UK, there is currently 76 flood warnings still in force. And further downpours are forecast for this week and the next. They also confirm what Mike was saying by stating, quote, parts of the country have endured rain almost without pause since the start of the year, end quote. So, yeah, it's raining all the time. There's also been a lot of trees falling down in heavy winds. Lots of businesses are affected by this. Everyone is not everybody. A lot of people are in deep trouble because of the weather and they can't function. Their businesses can't function properly due to that. So, well, obviously, and we know this, it's not possible to tie a specific weather event like this to ongoing climate change. But this is the sort of thing that you would expect from the climate change that we are in. And in fact, the models and prediction for the climate have not been as accurate lately as they have been before. It seems to go faster than expected. According to a Washington Post analysis, the fastest warming rate on record occurred in the last 30 years. They used a data set from NASA to analyze global average surface temperatures from 1880 to 2025. Robert Rode, who is the chief scientist at Berkeley Earth, he said, quote, "We're not continuing on the same path we had before. Something has changed," end quote. For about 40 years, to 2010, global warming proceeded fairly steadily, not normal, but on a regular pace. It warmed about 0.19 degrees per decade. This is Celsius centigrade. But the temperatures over the past decade have increased by close to 2.27 degrees. That's about a 42% increase. And especially the last 3 years, that is a very short period when we talk to climate. So that we have to admit that. But over the last 3 years, the warming chart has visibly taken off if you look at the charts. One effect is likely due to cleaner air paradoxically, because tiny sulfate aerosol particles due to emissions have had a dampening effect on warming. But since the emissions have now fallen, because we've made an effort, right, that takes away that, which have worked as a sort of protection. There's also been a decrease in low-lying clouds, and those have tended to reflect the sun's rays before, but without them, the planet gets warmer more quickly. And this shift in cloud cover could also be partly related to the aerosols that I mentioned, since clouds tend to form around particles in the atmosphere. But some researchers also say it could be a feedback loop from warming temperatures. We don't know exactly what's going on here. Only thing we can see is that it's getting faster than the models predicted. If it is this aerosol thing that is behind the increased warming, this feedback loop is expected to stop once we get rid of the aerosol particles and they reach zero. But until then, we should probably expect a continuation of the increase in warming. So this is what's happening to the weather. It's the climate that is changing. And unfortunately, this is now the new normal. We should not expect things to get better. They are probably getting worse. But still, we need to do everything we can to stop this, or at least dampen the effects. And what we should do, of course, is to decrease fossil fuel consumption. That is the main culprit here. Not every country seems to have gotten that message.
No.
I'm afraid.
And some of them are really high emitters, so they should really try to find that message. What you said about the new norm and how it's the most important thing that we are ready to face what's coming and to mitigate all that, I think that can be applied almost exactly to the advent of AI as well. So we will not be able to put the genie back into the bottle. Nothing we can do. We have to mitigate that. We have to be able to live with it in a normal way. So one thing that's very important in that context is that you realize how easy it is for you to be fooled. So if you think you're too smart to be fooled by a deepfake, for example, it's really time for a skeptical reality check. According to an article on The Guardian, which reports on a study that used data from something that's called the AI Incident Database, there is some warning that the deepfake fraud has officially hit industrial scales. So we're not just talking about funny videos or world leaders singing pop songs anymore in terms of deepfake. We're talking about a highly efficient, inexpensive, and borderless scam industry that is hitting Europe particularly hard. According to researchers at MIT and Harvard, the barrier to entry for creating convincing fakes has effectively vanished completely. It's no longer the domain of nation states or high-tech labs. For a few euros and a decent internet connection, pretty much anyone can now deploy tailored, high-quality deepfakes. And they are targeting us right here in Europe. The report highlights recent campaigns using the likenesses of Swedish journalists and even the president of Cyprus to hawk fraudulent investment schemes. In the UK alone, consumers lost an estimated £9.4 billion to fraud in just the 9 months leading up to November 2025. It's really huge, but it's not just about money, it's about a liar's dividend. As deepfakes become indistinguishable from reality, it's not just that we believe the fakes. It's not the only risk, but also that we stop believing the actual truth.
Yeah, I think that is the biggest problem, really.
It is, yes. It is. A recent study across 7 European countries found a massive vigilance gap between countries. While countries like the UK and Czechia are on high alert and politicians try to address that issue, other countries are much more relaxed and they don't really pay attention to the problem. Yet the data shows that even when we're trained to spot the deepfake, humans only catch deepfake audio about 73% of the time. Mm-hmm. And that will decrease immensely as the technology develops. And Europol has warned that by 2026, which, well, is basically now. Up to 90% of online content could be synthetically generated or enhanced. This isn't just a tech problem, it's an epistemic crisis. The whole of our understanding of the world will completely change as a result of this. The European AI Act is trying to catch up with that. requiring digital watermarks, for example, which is a good thing to ask for, and transparency as to, well, this was AI-related content or AI-generated content. But as we know, scammers don't follow regulations. They will obviously try to sell these contents as real. That's their whole shtick. Okay, so it's like, what do you expect? As the Guardian report makes it clear, the models are getting faster than the experts anticipated. In one case, a CEO was targeted by a deepfaked job candidate who made it through multiple rounds of video interviews before being caught by specialized forensic software. So they didn't realize that it was a fake, it was not even a real person that they talked to in a video interview. That is just mind-boggling. The bottom line of this, if a video call feels off, at least for now, because we still have those senses sometimes, if a voice sounds slightly robotic, or if a Swedish news anchor is telling you to buy crypto, trust your skeptical instincts. Okay,
I'll look out for that.
In an era of industrial scale deception, seeing is believing is officially a dead philosophy. Please don't follow that. It was outdated even when it was a big thing. Don't believe what you see and try to be more skeptical. Yeah. Wow. And push for those regulations, watermarks, and required transparency. Yeah. All right.
I think we're screwed.
We are big time.
Yeah.
But that brings us to the end of the news round, which means that we are about to find out who's been really wrong or really right lately.
Yes, there will be both actually this time.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a very similar theme as 2 weeks ago. We talked about religious education, or RE, in schools in Northern Ireland at the time, and this is a related story to that. The Northern Ireland humanists have raised concerns of continued religious influence on the RE syllabus. This follows the publication of the Department of Education, DOE, and their updated terms of reference for its review of the RE core syllabus. The problem is that the DOE has appointed a church-led consultative group which will examine the reviewed syllabus before public consultations. And this means that there's no representation of voices of non-religious parents or pupils. And the Northern Ireland humanists say that this will hinder the review to produce a fully inclusive RE syllabus. Their coordinator in this matter is called Boyd Slater. I hope that's how it's pronounced. And he said this, quote, "Consultation cannot be meaningful if one set of stakeholders representing religious interest have an effective sign-off before everyone else gets a say. Non-religious families need to know where their voice is in this process," end quote. And at the same time, on a very similar theme, the Humanist Society Scotland, the HSS, have a similar concern there in Scotland. Just days before the final vote on the Scottish Government Religious Observation Bill, it has found widespread Christian evangelizing during RO sessions, RO is religious observance, in non-denominational schools. So, religious propaganda in non-denominational schools. And the concerns are the same as we mentioned in Northern Ireland. Parents can, in theory, opt out of these religious nonsense classes for their children, but it is not easy. Peer pressure will keep a lot of these pupils in the classes because as a kid you don't want to be left out. You don't want to stick out as the strange kid who can't be allowed to go where all the other kids are going. And it's not, the end is not there, because Humanists UK has raised similar concerns also for Wales and for the whole UK. It seems to be riddled with this religious propagation in the schools. So, as I said, 2 awards this week. To the UK and Northern Ireland education system, we will give the Really Wrong Award for allowing this. And we send a Really Right Award to the Humanists UK, including the branches in Scotland and Northern Ireland, for highlighting this and trying to fight this problem.
Well deserved on both accounts.
Yeah.
I have to mention, though, the UK and Northern Ireland. In the UK, Northern Ireland is included.
Yes, you're right. Yeah. Correct.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we include them as well. But that's right. The UK is including Northern Ireland. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Pontus. And that brings us to the end of this week's episode, which means there is only one more thing to do, and that is a quote. But before we move on to the quote, I'd like to ask everyone to please spread the word. Please help us spreading the word as well by sharing, by liking, by leaving reviews on all kinds of different platforms. And you can support us in other ways as well. Like you can leave us €1 or 2 per episode, or as a one-off donation if you want to support financially what we're doing. And you can do it on Patreon, for example.
Yes, patreon.com/TheESP is where you should go, and you will find all the rules there. And it really makes a difference. It helps us a lot. So please do that. And if you're already doing that, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. To finish this week's episode, the quote comes from not a scientist, but an actor and comedian, Rowan Atkinson.
Ooh, Mr. Bean.
Mr. Bean. And even though he played the character that is the silliest on the whole planet, probably, he's a very smart guy. And I really like listening to what he has to say, because he usually makes a lot of sense, surprisingly, when you compare him to his own character as Mr. Bean. But what he said about the current age is, I think, really worth considering. The problem we have online is that an algorithm decides what we want to see, which ends up creating a simplistic, binary view of society. It becomes a case of either you're with us or against us. And if you're against us, you deserve to be cancelled. It's important that we're exposed to a wide spectrum of opinion, but what we have now is the digital equivalent of the medieval mob roaming the streets looking for someone to burn. So it is scary for everyone who's a victim of that mob, and it fills me with fear about the future.
All right.
And I do definitely join him in that fear. And I think this really fits the overall theme, like what we have covered on this episode, on several different connecting points. But that really brings us to the conclusion of this week's episode. So thank you very much, Pontus.
Thanks a lot.
Many, many thanks to our listeners as well for tuning in. Please keep doing so, and until next week, goodbye.
Hej då!
Viszontlátásra. This has been your ESP experience. The show is produced and recorded by TheESP.eu. Join us again next time, but until then, please send your feedback and comments to info@TheESP.eu. We would also love to hear your ideas and suggestions regarding topics, and if you have any skeptical news from any European country, we're always eager to hear about them. If you have an upcoming local event or an organization to promote, please don't hesitate to let us know, as we are more than happy to help. All music in the program was written and performed by Keisha J. Gray and George Robb and is used with their permission. Please check out our webpage for show notes and archive material at theesp.eu. Follow us on Blue Sky at theesp.bsky.social. Like us on Facebook or support our work on patreon.com/theesp. And don't forget to spread the word by sharing our content with others.
I don't know how you can believe.
Somehow the
Your scripts are gone.
The text is too big for me to read. How can that be?
I always have to do that. The resolution of my monitor that's in front of me is so high that I have to increase the font size.
But the problem was it was too big. It was too large to read.
Okay.
It was fine an hour ago. I don't know what happened. My brain just went bananas.
Okay. Let's hope it can be reversed at some point.
Brain reversing.
Oh, we should go on the market with that. Brain reversing.
The new alt-med thing.
The new alt-med
Reverse
thing.
your brain in only 5 minutes with this new crystal.
I can still not wrap my head around that he's king. He's gonna be forever Prince Charles for me. He's not kingly anyway, so it's like, whatever.
No, he was prince for like 73 years. It
Yeah.
takes time to get used to him changing
Yeah,
title.
That's a long time to wait for getting on the throne. To verify the identity and to verify the identity and suitability of major donors and partners. And a crowd is gathering at the Campo de' Fiori. No, I said it the way you would have said it.
What?
Because whenever you pronounce something
Yeah.
Italian, you exaggerate it. Like
I think that's the only way to do it, I think.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sydney!
Now the dog is entering the picture. Well, not the picture, but the soundscape.
No, what he does, he's looking at himself in the mirror, and he starts scratching the mirror.
Yeah, I do the same.
Yeah. We are about to find out who's been really wrong or really Viszontlátásra. That's just the original longer version of Viszlát.
I knew there was a longer version of it.